All right. Hello, world. My name is Bash, and this is the first front-end undefined stream. I guess I'm streaming to no one so far. I'm gonna wait around for a little bit to see if someone shows up. If they do, great. If not, I'm just gonna jump straight in and start answering some questions on Reddit. Yeah, or maybe I will just start right now and see if anyone turns up later. So since it's the first time I'm doing this, I have no idea how most of this stuff works. It's the first time I'm streaming to YouTube, so I have no idea whether any of this will work properly. But well, I'm curious to see how it will go, and I hope that someone joins me at some point. So yeah, I will just dive straight in, I guess. So here I am on Reddit, on the React.js subreddit, which is probably the subreddit I go to the most often. Let's try to find some questions that people haven't answered yet. Yeah. All right. Sort by new. All right. It's the newest. Yeah, newest is on the top. What is considered better from a performance point of view? Drilling properties, selecting properties twice. Let's assume a following example where a parent component has two selectors that return a big array of objects. The parents, direct children also require both of these arrays. Oh, hi, Salan. Where is my chat? Yeah, I apologize for any roughness. I'm still trying to get this going. I see your message, but there's some hearts that is covering a part of your message, which is kind of annoying. All right, welcome. Feel free to ask me any questions if you have some already. It's good to have you here. I suppose it does show who is online of the watchers. I only see if right now it says that I have 0 viewers, and it says there was 1 view. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how accurate the view count is. Yeah. All right, perfect. Feel free to jump in with any questions that come to your minds. If you want to add something or whatever, I'm all yours. Just let me know. So I will let's try to find some interesting questions here, or preferably something that hasn't been answered, so that it's actually helpful to someone. So yeah, what's considered better from a performance point of view? Drilling properties, selecting properties twice. Let's assume a following example where a parent component has two selectors that return a big array of objects. The parents, direct children also require both of these arrays. Should I import it once in the parent and drill it down to the children? Should I just select it twice, once in the parent and once in the children? It really depends. If it's just one layer, I feel like passing it down to the children is fine, because from what I know, there just isn't a performance hit for like selecting. I think when they say selecting twice, they mean selecting on Redux, so connecting it directly to a component. So yeah, in that case, if you are connecting both a parent and a child, I think it's okay. Yeah, and this is what someone mentions as well, that it doesn't really matter. The only time it really becomes annoying is if there's like a lot of if you're doing it several layers down. But yeah, let's go into the next one. I'm trying to wait for state to update in my test using the React testing library, and I just don't understand it. Wait for state to update. Okay, I have two components. Oh yeah, well, this one is unanswered, so let's see if we can figure it out. In my onChange event, I get what the user has selected and save it to state. In my test, it shows as null even after setting this value. So after it blocks the correct thing from being rendered and my test fails. Two components to render, one when state is true and one when state is false. Okay, okay. I get what the user has selected and save it to state. In my test, it shows as null even after setting this value, so it blocks the correct thing from being rendered and my test fails. Okay. In my test, I render the component, then click the button and expect the prop value to be updated, which changes, but after putting some console logs after the first line of handle submit, the button state is still set to null. Here is my test, render stuff, yes, radio button, okay, fire, yes, await, expect props dot something to have been called with success. What am I missing? The annoying thing is if I change the if statement to check the event, then it all works. So it's all related to state not updating in my eyes. All right. Set button state. This one is async, which is one thing I notice. And first of all, I don't think you should ever. All right, so he's testing a mock, I imagine. Props dot something. If I change the if statement to check the event, then it all works. So it related to state not updating in my eyes. This code snippet is missing a lot of stuff. Especially, I don't know if props.something is a mock. So I will just maybe mention this. And this is props.something a mock. Yeah, set prop value, what changes, what is rendered. Yeah, but maybe this person is also trying to change the state of a parent component from a child, which is a bit strange. But it is something that someone who is initially learning React tends to do. They really mix up how things can get passed. So I will just mention that as well. That you can't change. All right. I have a question about pre-rendering a React page. I'm talking about rendering in build time, all the pages of the application. Okay. So I think what you're referring to, Zalan, it's what is server-side rendering, or abbreviated to SSR, or yeah. So you have several options for this because let me give you some context on this. So there is two ways to do it. One is SSR, or server-side rendering. This is on Vue. Usually for React server-side rendering, the most popular way to do this server-side rendering is with Next.js. And Next.js will render on the server the React stuff to HTML and then send the HTML to the client, rather than sending the JavaScript to the client and have the client build the HTML, if that makes sense. All right, okay, in that case, you can still use Next, because Next has this option. Then you are looking at something called static site generation. It's called, yeah, static site generation, like this, or SSG. In Next, you have an option. I think if you, I actually use this on one of my sites. So Next.js static exports. Yeah, exactly. So for this, you just set this flag in the Next config, saying output exports, and then Next.js will go through the entire React application, try to render as much of it as possible. It will not be able to render everything, but it will, because the thing is, right now Next.js is a bit more than just React. It has a whole bunch of other stuff around server-side logic and so on. So when you export it to pages, it can only do the stuff that plain React can do. So it will export this to HTML, and then you have a bunch of HTML that you can just throw onto some web hosting or a S3 bucket or something, and it will then there doesn't need to be any server, like it's just a storage or a bucket, so the cloud your users can just download the files directly. But the thing to note here is that when you do it like this, you still it's still a React application. So what you're doing is you're just making it a bit easier. What I mean by that is when you do it this way, the HTML is pre-rendered, so there is something for the browser to load immediately, and it will load it, and then it will start a React application. It will start React and attach it to all of the exactly. That's exactly what will happen. So it starts static. The static HTML will go to the client, and then it gets hydrated, and so it will become like a full React application in the end. So the benefit you get with this is you don't need to run, let's say, a Next.js server. It can be on a static hosting, and also you have faster load times, better SEO, search engine optimization, because everything is rendered. But it is still it's still a React application. It still requires JavaScript to run. If you want to take it a step further and remove all of the JavaScript, when I was looking into this, I found in Next.js there was an experimental flag for no JavaScript, so you can basically generate some static, like purely static pages, even with React, even with a dynamic thing as React. Experimental no JavaScript, let's say. Yeah, it's still experimental. I really wasn't able to find something that said that it was actually added into Next.js proper. Yeah, like another option to look into is Gatsby, Gatsby.js. Gatsby.js, or now I think they just call it Gatsby. These frameworks can't make up their mind. They call themselves Gatsby.js or React.js and then go back to Gatsby or React just without the JS bit. So Gatsby is another option to consider. Gatsby is more of a server-side, static site generator fully. Like it's meant purely to generate static sites in the end. They will still be hydrated as well. So it's, I guess in the end, at this point, Next.js, Gatsby, both are doing the same thing. They render to static, throw it to the client, and hydrate it on the client. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Yeah. Okay. So my own experience with doing this is, for example, I built a small app, and then the app has a landing page. Like this, for example, is a Next.js site that is exported to static and then hosted on Netlify. So I can show this to you in action. Yeah, where is it? So what you can see here is, well, it doesn't maybe show, well, I can actually do it like this. If I reload it and so show the response. This is the JS file, give me, yeah, see, exactly. So now this one versus, like if this was a normal React application, you wouldn't have any of this stuff, because all of this stuff will be generated purely on the client. But once you start using Next.js and once you start generating stuff on the backend, then all of this stuff is generated on like beforehand, so it can be directly sent to the server and something can be shown straight away without it having to be computed in JavaScript. And yeah, so this thing is sent to the client, the browser, and the browser will parse it, and then it will download the JavaScript and attach it. So that's sort of how it works. So take a look at it. I think I think Next.js is the better way to go right now, because Gatsby has started becoming a bit unpopular recently, I think. Whereas Next.js is becoming almost React at this point, because a lot of new React features only work on Next.js, and by extension also on Vercel, which is the hosting for Next.js. So Next.js would probably be a better option for playing around with this server-side rendering / static site generation. Yeah. Okay. Note that I will get back to answering this question. Note that you can't change the props of a parent component from a child's component. Yeah. I'm relatively new to using React and front-end frameworks, and about to start a project which will involve updating components after the initial page load, plus API calls. However, page speed and optimization and SEO is a high priority. Will I be fine just using standard Reacts, or do I need something more involved like Next.js? Kind of similar to the thing that you were just asking. Right. Well, I will maybe answer it like this. If you are extremely concerned about performance, then server-side rendering with Next.js is the way to go. But do note that this adds more complexity to the project, and in my experience, I find that this really makes sense when you have a large team that can manage all these moving parts. All these moving parts. What else? Yeah. You can still go really far with just plain React SPA rendered entirely on the client. And perhaps using a CDN so that the JavaScript can be loaded by the browser, can be loaded by the browser faster. Can be loaded by the browser faster. Just enter there to make that a bit clearer. Let's see. Usually a lot of these questions are really hard to answer because you don't have a lot of context about what exactly they're trying to do. So sometimes I find that you need to sort of start a conversation, maybe just answer something. Yeah. Could you explain a bit more about cookies? Let's say I want to add Google Analytics in Europe. I need to ask for their permissions. What else do I need to know? This is a great question. I have been dealing with this a lot as well, because I run several sites. One is my blog. The other is this app that I showed you, which I just started. And yeah, I'm also based in the EU, so I have the same thing. I have to get cookie consent. One interesting thing I noticed, and that's whoops, camera shut off there for a second. Really need to keep an eye on it. Anyways, what I was saying is, yeah, one interesting thing I found is So a good guide that I found is Matamo's cookie consent. Um, Personally, this is what I use. I should also ask. So you're planning to use Google Analytics, I see. So if you're planning to use Google Analytics, then you need to show a cookie banner. There is not much choice around that. Because the thing is, Google Analytics uses what is third-party cookies, and third-party cookies are what the cookie laws are the most strict about. They really want you to go and get explicit consent from your users if you are using third-party cookies. So if you are using specifically Google Analytics, you definitely need to put up a cookie banner. You need to have a cookie policy. Um, and also allow the users to opt out of the cookies. I'm really not sure whether Google Analytics has something built in for this already, actually, because I feel like they should have. Um, Consent modes. Well, the thing I haven't I the to be honest with you, I haven't looked into like cookie consent for Google Analytics specifically because I use like something called Matamo. Matamo is like an alternative to Google Analytics. It's self-hosted. You have it on your own server, and you own all of the analytics data. It's not shared with anyone else. And personally, yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm going into right now. So Matamo is one such option that for example, Matamo, which is this, um, right? So this, as they say, is the Google Analytics alternative that protects your data and your customers' privacy. Yeah. And it's sort of true because their data only goes to your servers. You have to host Matamo yourself. Well, they have their own hosted version as well, which is this on-premise, I think what they call it. Yeah, not on-premise, cloud, Metamo Cloud is their hosted version. There are also some others. Some others I know are this Plausible, which is even more simpler. And Plausible is uh, even more friendly when it comes to cookies because I think they don't use any cookies whatsoever. Um, if I remember correctly, they don't use any cookies whatsoever. So you can just use this without having to have a cookie banner because you are not using cookies. But the downside of this is that yeah, exactly. No need for cookie banners or GDPR PR consent because cookies are not used. The downside of this is, of course, the analytics data that you have is a lot less reliable. And I've seen it myself because originally when I set up my own blog, I also didn't want to bother with all these cookie banners, with this collecting consent or whatever. And when I was using Matamo, Matamo has option for cookieless tracking. So I was using that. Where is it? Yeah. So you can tell Matamo, hey, stop using cookies. All of the cookies, just try to track without them. And that's what I was using for a while. And the data I got some data for sure, but it's really difficult because people use sites in a very unpredictable way because like they will, for example, find the site on Google, they open like a whole bunch of tabs, then they go back to it sometimes, then they leave the tabs open maybe for days. And when you don't have cookies, it's really hard to track who is a new visitor or who is just the person who had like the tab open already and came back to it. So this is where cookies really help, like improve the quality of the analytic data. So I added cookie consent in the end, and because I used Matamo, and Matamo does not use third-party cookies, I didn't really need to collect cookie consent explicitly because there is a very specific case. I wish I had the links for it now, but I will try to find it. Um, EU first party cookies. Because in general, first party cookies are the cookies that are set directly on your site. Third-party cookies are cookies that are set on other domains. So Google Analytics uses third-party cookies because Google Analytics set cookies on google.com or analytics.google.com, and not on your site, not on the site where you are using Google Analytics. That's why it's third-party cookies. First-party cookies are the cookies that are on your site, which are only accessible to things that are loaded onto your site. So Mattermost has this option where Mattermost only uses first-party cookies by default. So there is an exception in the EU law which says a very specific one. I wish I will, if I ever find the documents, if you are interested, I will send you the documents later. But in a nutshell, if you are with Mattermost and you use first-party cookies, you don't have to ask cookie consent at all. And that's sort of what I'm doing on my sites, not on this one. For example, on this one, find.com. Right? There, you don't have to ask for consent, but you do need to notify people that you are using cookies by having some kind of policy noticing that you're using cookies, and then also give them the option to opt out. So this is what I do. I have cookie tracking enabled by default, and you can opt out by clicking here. And this explains why, and it explains that you can opt out. So this is another option. So either you have a cookie banner and use Google Analytics, or you use an analytics solution that doesn't use cookies, or you use Mattermost, for example, which has first-party cookies which are allowed to be used by default, granted that you provide a way for the user to opt out and that you inform them that you are using cookies, in fact. Does that make sense? I think I've been going on for a while now. Is it clear? Is consent only required in Europe? Yes, for the most part, yes. The EU has the strongest cookie policy laws. So yeah, the thing is, if you are in EU and your website will be shown to at least any person in the EU, then you need to follow the cookie policy laws. Anywhere outside, you don't need to, as far as I know. I don't think any other region ever enforced any cookie policies. So I remember in the early days when they introduced the cookie law, I think it was back in 2015, 2016-ish, a lot of American companies, they were not compliant because they just, they just were not, they were not prepared for it. So their solution was to just ban all European visitors. Like they checked the IP addresses. Then if they detected that you're from some European IP, then they just don't show you the site. And that's how they became compliant in a way, because the EU law states that you need to have cookie policies if you are serving visitors in the EU. You don't have to do that if you are not serving visitors in the EU, which is, it's a dramatic way to solve this, but it's a solution nonetheless. But I imagine that in your case, you definitely want to serve people in Europe, so you have to comply. I have, to be honest, I'm also have to, I'm yet to hear of a person who has been actually chased after, like an individual, because usually these cookie policies, the EU institutions, they go after the bigger companies because the bigger companies have like the most usage. So if there's any violations of all these EU laws, they are the bigger companies, the companies that are making like massive amounts of profits, massive amounts of users. They are the first people that the EU is likely to go after if we're not following these things. So in theory, if you slip up a bit, it's it's unlikely that they will come after you. But this is of course not something you can recommend. Like, hey, don't follow the law because it's unlikely it's going to be enforced. It's not something that I can ever advocate for. So yeah. Cookies, it's a pain. It really sucks that I definitely believe that GDPR and all these EU regulations that were introduced they're really important. That they really are for the benefit of the user, but then they were so vague about how this should be implemented, and then the companies just went crazy about hey, let's just make it painful as possible to the end user, so that the end users will hate cookies, and maybe by definition, by extension, hate the EU laws as well, even though they meant well with the regulations. All right. I also have a question about lazy loading components in React. Is it a good practice to use it? Definitely. If you are at all able to use lazy loading, go for it. If I'm honest with you, I am still yet to use it. It's been years since lazy loading actually came out in React. What was it, back in 2019, I believe, 2018, when it first got supported through Suspense. Now it's a lot more mature. The thing is, it requires a bit of effort to set up, and I have to look into this now because I haven't looked into this recently. Because on the projects that I'm working on right now, they have way more problems than lazy loading. Like, there's so many other things that would be more beneficial than lazy loading. So I'm mostly tackling these when I get the chance, because that's the hard part about all these features, right? Like, one, it takes effort to set them up, and it takes effort to like keep them working. So yeah, if you are able to, go for it, of course. I don't think there's any downside to it, except there's only upsides to this. Your users will not have, like, of course, loading times will be much faster. And I mean, that's the biggest benefits of lazy loading, definitely. That you don't have the clients don't have to download the entire JavaScript bundle. They just download what is required for the current screen. But it takes some effort to set up. I think over the years it's probably become a lot easier to set up now, because now the APIs are more finalized. Yeah, a bit lazy. So yeah, by all means, go for it. I think it's at a point where it's mature enough that you will not really struggle. But because I haven't used it myself, I can't tell you what it's like. Very soon, maybe I will start trying to introduce lazy loading on one of the projects I'm working on. But yeah, it's a optimization that comes a bit later, in my opinion, because especially if you are working on like a personal project, which is most of the projects I'm working on, there is so many other things to do before you get to these like nice to have optimizations. So I always try to like get things out faster rather than being stuck forever with all these optimizations, because optimization is endless. You can start and there's no end to it. You can do this, you can do more. So it's a rabbit hole. So especially in the early days, when you're just building out the initial versions, it doesn't make much sense to focus on lazy loading. Lazy loading makes more sense in any case. Usually optimization makes sense after you have a problem. There's this so-called premature optimization, where you just um, try to write codes in advance that is supposed to be optimal, but it ends up being worse. So it's generally, you should only try to optimize after you have a problem rather than beforehand. I think lazy loading is one of these optimizations which is worth doing after or later rather than sooner. But you ask different people, they will tell you different things. Does that make sense? Does it seem clear? Just to let you know, I believe there's some delay between all the stream, the messages I get. So there's a bit of a delay, I think, which is not ideal. But yeah, every time you write a message, I see it a couple of seconds later. All right, perfect. Yeah, feel free to ask me any more questions if it seems unclear. Because of the delay in the chat, it's not entirely cool to like. I wish I could respond faster, but yeah, it's a bit clumsy. I realize. Yep. So let me know if there's anything else you would like to know, and yeah, let me get back to this one then. Right. I want to automatically apply predefined selection stars to the text of the particular color. All right, more questions. Keep it coming, Zalan. You have some amazing questions. It's really getting my brain going. So yeah, I have a question about SEO of client-side rendered applications. Does Googlebot and other scrapers render the page? I mean, do they invoke React rendering? Yes, they do. They do. Initially, they didn't. Back in the day, Google bots only only got the HTML content. It didn't really run JavaScript. But nowadays, Googlebot does run JavaScript. So as long as it will see what a normal user would see. So it will render it once, and then get the contents based on what you rendered. Yeah, JavaScript apps. Yeah. Yeah. So in a nutshell, yeah. So even if you don't use any of this server-side rendering, static site generation, whatever, it still will not be so bad for SEO as long as you follow the other best practices of having the proper tags, writing semantic HTML. As long as you follow those practices and some of the other practices that you can find on Google's own site, because Google has written a lot. Google has written a lot about how to make your site better in terms of SEO. So there's a lot to be learned by just going through this. But in general, yes, you don't really need to do some server-side rendering to make sure that Google can pick it up. Google can pick it up. So what about content that's generated by UseEffect? I'm using a third-party package that mounts new HTML content with UseEffect, Code Mirror. If the UseEffect fires, I think immediately, well, which it should usually, I guess, it should be all right. But yeah, do note that it will not, like, as far as I know, Googlebot will not go and interact with the site. Like, it will load the URL. It will maybe wait until the DOM has settled, until all the elements that have all the loading spinners, whatever that is dynamic has stopped. It will wait until all of that has stopped, and then it will scrape it. That's my understanding of it so far. I haven't looked into it that much because personally I keep all of my sites static. So I don't really have anything that uses JavaScript. Like all of my sites have static HTML, so I haven't looked into this much. But in theory, I think it should be all right. But the more tricky part, I think, but I guess that should be all right also, because what I was thinking is that when you have a normal Create React application, is there a tool that lets me see what Googlebot sees? I definitely think so. Let's take a look. Well, Googlebot, it's the search console test, I guess. Google Search Console URL inspection tool. Yeah, this is what it is, I think. Open the URL inspection tool. Well, actually, these are some of my own sites, for example. So I think once you add your pages well, this is definitely, by the way, if you are setting up a site, this is definitely something you should do, which is add your site to the Google Search Console. so that Google explicitly knows that your site site exists first of all, and that you also have a sitemap, so that Google knows all the pages that are within a site. So these are the basics of SEO to ensure that Google knows the page that your site exists and that it has these specific pages. So yeah, so for example, these are all the stuff that is scraped on my site. I'm not sure it actually shows what Googlebot sees. Well, this is the rich results, this is a different kind of thing, because rich results is the sort of thing that comes up when you search for, I don't know, what can I search for? Let's say search for Prague. So rich results are like these additional snippets that show up on the sides or on the top. So for that, you need to add extra metadata to your site, extra meta tags in your head. So I don't think this will really show it. But yeah, let's look at it. I actually haven't see a page as Googlebot sees it. No. Well, this seems a bit spam-like, but we'll see. Create a sitemap. Yeah. Webmaster tool URL section. Yeah, but there he's recommending the same thing that I just mentioned, which is adding it to the Search Console and then having the sitemap. But yeah, there is nothing to explicitly show, hey, this is what Googlebot sees. You have to like one thing you will see for sure is you will see that the Googlebot will crawl these URLs, so you will definitely see that it has gone and read the stuff from it. But yeah, you don't know what sort of content it has read from these URLs. This is true. And as far as I know, I haven't come across any way that you could actually do that. Inspect URL. Oh, here we go. Page indexing, view crawl page. Nice. Okay, so you can actually. So this is the crawl page, and this is what it figured out in the end. Is from my site. All right, it's very hidden. It's very hidden. So you have to go to pages, you have to go to index pages, then you have to click this small inspect URL button, and then in it you get that screen with the URL is on Google, and then you can see view crawl page. Cool. And screenshot is only available in live test. Okay, do a live test then. This might take a minute or two. Great, we have time to kill. All right. So this is apparently what Googlebot sees. And this is an image. Google Inspection Tool smartphone. Is this Google Inspection Tool accessible even outside? I guess not, maybe. More info. Yeah, it's cool. I think, yeah, also if there's some issues with the site, Google automatically like notifies you. So if you are, where is it? If you are here, it says that some pages have problems, and then they list these here. So yeah, and most of the time these are pages with redirects, stuff of this nature. Yeah, well, I also learned something new today. But yeah, this search console is very powerful, but it's maybe not the most user-friendly thing in the world. There's a lot of stuff that is uh, hidden under all these menus, which even I'm still new to. Honestly, I started playing around with search engine optimization and so on last year when I started having these blogs and doing all this stuff. So I'm also very new to this, so I'm not an expert of this by any means. But yeah, so but now you know for sure that it's something that Google itself, like it's not some third-party tool, so you know for sure that that is exactly what the Google bot sees. So you have no doubt about it, I think. So yeah, I guess maybe in a long way I answered your question. All right. Keep them coming, man. Keep the questions coming. I appreciate it. You have some amazing questions so far. Uh, right. So until I hear back from you, I'll try to get back to this. To the right. I want to automatically apply predefined selection styles to the text of the particular color. How can I do that in TSX? Without using third-party libraries in my app, I have a number of different colors for text. Currently, I just apply a CSS class, but I sometimes forget I have to do it. And as my website grows large, it gets painful to maintain. It won't work if my text color changes. I would love to have a general manager. Sounds like he wants someone to like manage his hotel or something, but yeah. If I select black text, it makes the selection color black and text color white. If I select a yellow text, it changes the selection color to yellow, but only of that block of code. If I simultaneously select text of two different colors, it should apply selection styles to each individually. Oh God. I wanna. So he has some text, and the text is of different colors. And then he wants to automatically invert the colors, invert the selection color based on what is being hovered on. I have no idea. Without manually without manually assigning CSS classes for this, I have no idea how one could go about doing this. It's that has able a change cursor color if I hover over something that has on-click property defined. How can I do that? I would love to have, yeah. I wonder if it, I mean, it's not going to be a very helpful response to just respond like, I have no idea how this works. But it can also save a person time. But I mean, there might be a way to do this. Different colors for text. As far as I know, there is no CSS selector for targeting text color or another CSS property. You can definitely target attributes. So if I remember correctly, text color is an HTML attribute. Let's see. Font color. Font element. Okay. Font color attribute. Color inside a font element. Okay. Font MDN. Font element. MDN. Deprecated. Oh, well, then no chance. Color. This attribute sets the text color using a named color or a color specified in the hexadecimal RRGGBB format. Yeah. I don't think there's a way to do this. All right. In my React app, I have many components that store some kind of state inside the local store. For example, I have a dynamic layout with resizable widgets. The size of each such widget is stored. What are the best practices to manage such states? Should I manage them in a central state manager, maybe Redux, React's context? I'm worried that will cause too much re-renders of the entire page inside the local store. For example, I have a dynamic layout with 3 sizable widgets. The size of each such widget is stored. So you have many components that have you have global state which many components need. In that case, going into something like Redux is definitely worth it, I think. This is a very common pattern that you have a whole bunch of like you have either components that share states, or you have I need more coffee. Let me read this again. In my React app, I have many components that store some kind of state inside the local store. For example, I have a dynamic layout with resizable widgets. The size of each such widget is stored. What are the best practices to manage such states? Should I manage them in a central state manager? Maybe Redux, React context. Yes. If you have many components and all of them have state that is somehow shared, definitely go with some state management. Redux is of course the best known, and if you're going with Redux, definitely go with Redux Toolkit and not plain Redux, because conventional Redux used to be used to involve. Oh yeah, this is the trouble with the first time streams. Yeah, I just ran out of batteries. Had to swap out batteries. Need to get a. If I'm gonna keep doing this, I definitely need to get a dummy battery for my camera. Right. Now resizing the components only re-renders the component itself. If I put it into context, it will re-render the whole page. Zalan, do you have any code that you can share with me, any repository or something? Because that will definitely help me like give you some better advice, I'd say. If you are able, like if the state does not need to be shared across several components, then I think you don't need to consider like global state management. Global state management is only really useful if you have some piece of state which needs to be accessed in many places and maybe changed from several places as well, which is usually the case when you are building some kind of app, and then you have like multiple screens which are then using the same data that it downloads. So usually central state management is very helpful for this. So if you have a situation where each of your components have states and the state only matters to that component, I think, yeah, first of all, don't feel pressured to like rush into this. Like, don't feel pressured into thinking that you need to have state management, because especially when you are starting out, it like it's really hard to give advice when it comes to state management, to be honest. Like, it really depends on the use case, on how big the application is, and all of this. So there isn't like one size fits all advice that I can tell you, like use state manage, like use Redux all the time, don't use Redux all the time. It's really hard to say. If you, yeah, it's have you worked with Redux so far, or have you used something like central state management so far? Because if you're familiar with it, then it's much easier to start using it and so on. If you're not and you're adopting it for the first time, then you're making your life a lot more complicated because you have to learn Redux, you have to learn how it works, you need to learn how the flux pattern works, and yeah, so you are not yet familiar with Redux. So in that case, I'd say, yeah. So React context, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think React context should be used for stuff like this, for like state management, because yeah, React context is built for something else, to be honest. Like, it's not really built to manage state. React context is built to, let's say, share things with components, but state management and what comes with state management is is a different thing. It's a different set of concerns. It's really hard for me to explain this maybe easily, but I probably, maybe I'll come work up a small example by the next stream that I can maybe show you. Uh, but yeah, um, if you're already using React context to sort of share state across different parts of the application, then maybe it's better to just switch to using Redux than using React context. The reason why is Redux has a lot more features built in to prevent exactly the sort of issues that React context has when you try to use it for state management. So React context has like a lot of edge cases. Like, it, for example, you have to be very careful when using React context with children or child components, because the child components and their children will re-render. Let me see if I can find this article. It will definitely do a better job than me right now of explaining this. Gotchas. Yeah, pitfalls of overusing React context. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of this stuff about people advocating for not using React context. Yeah, basically they recommend the same thing, which is like, you shouldn't be reaching for context to solve every state sharing problem that crosses your desk. I'm gonna see if there's an example of some of the issues that this has. No. Great. I don't want to sign up. There was a great article about the issues of about the issues with React context, and I just, yeah, you will never, I can never find things when I want to. So yeah, well, if you can share some code with me at some point, then maybe I can give you some better advice, because this is very generic things I can say without really knowing the use case, without seeing how it's being used. But in general, yes. If you are trying to do, if you're trying to share state across several components, React context is not the best for this. So if you are wanting to do that, then consider using Redux. If maybe not even Redux, you can use something a bit simpler like Sustand, which is also state management, but not as heavy, so-called heavy as Redux. So it's a bit more simpler, it's a bit more lightweight, but then it comes with the cost that you have to set a bit more things up yourself, because you have to be a bit more responsible for setting up the structure of your app and stuff of this nature. So there is a chance that if you don't know what you're doing, you can make more of a mess if you end up if you start using with start with Sustand. Whereas Redux, has been around for a long time. They have a lot of documentation about it, and especially recently, the story is, back in the day when Redux was first introduced, they basically had a simple library that did very little things. Oh, I'm looking quite dark there actually. Yeah, one of the issues with more stuff I need actually is apparently lighting, because now in Prague it gets dark at around, I don't know, 4:30, which is basically what it is now. So yeah, in that kind of light I'm basically not visible, so it's maybe something worth getting as well. Yeah. So what I was saying is, Redux, when it was first introduced, it was just a simple library. They didn't provide any advice. They didn't provide any ways to structure it. And people went crazy for a while, for a few years. Everyone had their own way of setting up Redux. A whole bunch of things came out to help you work with Redux. There's this thing called Redux Saga, for example. And then there were all these like Redux Thunk and all this stuff. So people came up with all sorts of things to manage Redux, and then it was just crazy. So eventually, the guys at Redux sort of realized that, hey, this is not ideal. People are like getting lost. So in the last few years, they started getting really opinionated. Really, they started providing a lot more advice about how to structure your application, and also they introduced things that gave you a much stronger idea of how you can set up an app. And that's what Redux Toolkit is. It's this, more opinionated library for working with Redux. And yeah, it's so if you're trying to adopt state management, then Redux is maybe better. Like if you're learning central state management as well, it's a bit better because it has a lot more advice, if that makes sense. It has much better documentation about how to use it, how to introduce it, how state management should be handled. So if you're just learning central state management, I would still maybe recommend going with Redux Toolkits, because the documentation and everything is so much better. And once you use it and once you understand what its downfalls are, what its issues are, then you are in a much better place to adopt something like Zustan, because then you can just follow the principles that you learn from Redux, but using Zustan, which is much lighter, if that makes sense. I hope all of this makes sense, actually. Maybe I diverted from the original question. All right. Yeah, if it seems unclear, yeah, please ask any follow-up questions. Um, I see now why most of these live streams actually have a chat shown in the stream itself, because yeah, it's the delay is quite large. There's quite a large delay between you seeing what I'm saying, and then also a large delay in the video being processed and delivered to you. So I think there's a good 10 seconds, 5 seconds between, interaction, which is not ideal. So maybe I will consider adding a chat on the side of the stream next time, so that people have a good idea of when I am seeing a message, because it's really not very obvious, I think. All right, I think I will maybe do a few more questions and then call it a day, because it is a bit of a mental workout trying to do this stream like this. So I will check a few more questions and I guess I will call it a day. Okay, umbrella silver shade. Let's say I have a component A whose children are B and C. B holds the logic to mutate some data and C holds the logic to render that data. I want B to keep the master copy of the data and send a copy to C whenever the data changes. Currently my code looks like this. A function B, some whole bunch of stuff, function C. My friends tell me the React way that the closest common ancestor should be the single source of truth, and I should move the state to A. If I understand correctly, it should be more like this. I feel like this violates some kind of single responsibility pattern, even though B is the only component with any ability to change the data. In the second example, B still depends on A to change the state. My question is, how egregious is the first example? I should know what this word means, but I don't. So I will look that up. Okay, bad or shocking. All right. I want B to keep the master copy of the data and send a copy to C whenever the data changes. Change data, change data. Okay, change data. Listen data, change state. Okay, this is the A, there should be the single source of truth, and I should move the state to A. But the state is already in A. Try to increase the light in here because it's really dark. Yeah, I'm using the poor man's lighting array, which is I'm just increasing the brightness of my monitor, which I guess sort of does the trick. The React way is that A should be the single source of truth, and I should move the state to A. Set handle B, B, C. Huh. All the buttons in the second B still depends on A to change the state. Egregious. So he or she thinks that this is bad, and he's been told that this is better, and wants to know why this is bad. Is it bad? I can't really say that this is bad. To be fair, this is definitely more familiar. When I look at this, I think this seems familiar to me. I've seen this a lot. But is this bad? Because this thing is still doing the same thing. It's handling the I would maybe reply to this saying that as I will preface that this is only my opinion, because people will come after me with pitchforks. If not, I think that as long as the state lives in a single component and it is not being copied across several components, it is all right. Well, then that sentence does not make sense. So I think that it is all right as long as the state lives in a component and it is not being copied across several components, i.e. The children components also have use state hooks that rely on the value from the parent component. So in the examples you provided, as far as I can see, listen data, callback function, set change data, change handle action. I want B to keep the master copy of the data and send a copy to C whenever the data changes. Currently, my code looks like this. Right. So in both of these examples, the state lives in A. Because the use state is in both cases in A, and A is the parent of B and C. So I don't see much difference between these two snippets. The state lives in A, which is the parent of B and C. So I don't see much which is the parent of B and C. So see much of a difference. I will just leave it like this. No easy questions today by the looks of it. I have a radio group with a yes or no button. I would like to check when yes is selected and no is selected, and also when neither is selected. I can check two easily by using onChange for yes or no. I already store this in React state as a boolean, but what about the unselected state? I have to do some conditional rendering where three different things will be rendered, one for yes, one for no, and one for unselected. Any thoughts on the best way to do this? I'm thinking to not set the state as a boolean, but as a string, unselected, yes, no. I have a radio group with a yes or no button. I'd like to check. Selected string, yes, no. Video gallery post, how to use React Player so that user can embed video to websites. This is an entire blog post worth of information that this person is asking for. I will try to answer this, but like it's becoming a bit difficult for me to keep my brain in place. Radio group with a yes and no button. I would like to check when yes is selected, no is selected, and when neither is selected. Track easily with onChange for yes and no. I can store this in React state as a boolean, but what about unselected state? I'll do some conditional rendering when three things, one for yes, no for no, and one for unselected. Any thoughts? Not to, but as a, yeah. So what this person is looking for is an enum. And an enum, unfortunately, is something that does not exist in the JavaScript world, which is a shame. So what you need is an enum, which sadly does not exist in vanilla JavaScript. JavaScript.js, but it does exist in TypeScript. You can still use something like an enum in JavaScript with an object. Like so. What is this? Like so. we will call this object radio state, or I think, I don't know, maybe, yeah, let's call it radio state. I wonder if this will make sense, but we'll see. If it's unclear, hopefully they will get back to me. If not, yes, yes, yes. Yes. Do I use double? Yes, I will use double. No. There should be a code snippet widget, but it always never works the way I expect it to. Inline code, nope. Does the, okay, that works. All right. Command V, no, that doesn't work either. If I give it a something like this, no, that doesn't work either. Oh, but then this is good enough. It got rid of the arbitrary spaces, new lines between each line, which is something like enum with the object like so. Using something like this. This is better than using a string. Because the values are defined in an object, because the string values are defined in the object, and there is less chance of typos and such happening. It's less chance of typos. If it's a radio group, also if you also in this instance, a radio group in this radio buttons might not be the best fit, since radio buttons are intended to have at least one option selected. Checkboxes are more appropriate. Checkboxes will be more appropriate. All right. Yeah. So maybe the last question. Any other questions, Zalan? If you're still there, feel free. I think in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna call it a day for this stream. Yeah. I'm attempting to format a string as its state is being set. The state is being set inside of a nested for loop, where an indent is supposed to appear after the nested loop. The output is supposed to be in rows. The numbers are supposed to be formatted to account for multiple digits. Here's an example of what I'm attempting. Why is this is more of a JavaScript question rather than a React question, actually. Ah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Doesn't appear. I'm gonna just do an easy question right now. My brain is short, so I'm gonna try and find some more easier questions where I can just rant about something. Hello everyone, I recently started learning React and now I'm on a point where I want to use React for a new project which is actually pretty large and SEO is important. Now I can't be asked to learn about SSR at this moment. I would like to start to work on this project CSR and the backend API in Laravel. I would like to know if it's feasible to port certain parts of the CSR project to SSR eventually, or should I learn about SSR and start working on my project after? Yeah, definitely. I would agree with this person. Is it feasible to port? I do have a lot of experience in making custom web applications with Raw PHP and want to invest time to learn a front-end library like React, but I think now is the time. Now is definitely the time, I would say. Well, maybe now is not even beyond the time because funnily enough, like the React world is going back to server-side rendering. It's funny. We started off in a world filled with PHP and server-side rendering, and then React came along and it's like, hey, let's do everything on the client. And then they realized, okay, the client can't do everything either. So now we have all these server-side components and shit that just takes everything back to the server again. Oh, the world goes in circles. Uh, I will. Oh, didn't know you could do that. Second, what the person above said, you can start off with a pure client-side rendered pure client-side rendered normal SPA, and then later move it to SSR. In fact, I think Next.js and so Next.js is built to allow such kind of gradual migration since most SPAs, most React applications have a similar life. Yeah, I guess so. Have a similar life. Start off as fully client-side and then gradually move to the server. Seconding what the person above said, you can start off with pure CSR, normal such kind of sense. Yep, I think that sort of makes sense. Hello everyone, reading the documentation, they recommend using Next.js, Remix, etc. What I'm wondering is if I can get on with this study without using Next and others, and should I move on to the documentation of the various frameworks? Is studying React without touching frameworks counterproductive, or is it worthwhile studying? Yeah, this, I think all of them covered it quite well. You don't really need to learn anything about all this Next.js and stuff. Just learn React first, and then move on to the other stuff, because it's all of these other stuff are built to be added on top. React is still maybe the biggest part of it, biggest thing to learn. Yeah. I am developing a MERN app, but it needs to also run when the backend is down or not accessible. For example, maybe I create a new user that will access the app and temporarily, okay. Basically, I need it to run in offline mode and sync when the backend is available. Are there any packages for this, or would you maintain something like a local MongoDB to temporarily hold collections? I do not know about MongoDB, but basically, what this person is describing is offline first applications, which basically have everything done offline first and then synchronize in the background. It's a pattern that I really like. The application that I built before lunch, it's also an offline first app. Everything is saved offline first, and then in the background, it syncs to the server. It's much better for UX because you don't have loading spinners. You don't need to wait for things to load. Everything is there. Everything works offline. Um, but I don't know of such offline first projects for Mongo. Um, Interesting. The offline approach to mobile app development. It's a white paper? Who makes white papers about stuff like this? February 2021. Oh, right. Yeah, MongoDB has this thing which is Realm. I've never played around with it. I've only heard of it. And embedded object-oriented database, real-time, always-on applications, serverless JavaScript functions, web. Yeah. But I don't even know if this is free, because if I remember, MongoDB is a lot more than just a database now. They have a whole bunch of other stuff that they give you, an entire development platform, more or less. So I'm not sure whether this is any advice that I can give. The only thing I would mention is maybe I'll mention like the things I do know about building offline first stuff here. So that the person at least knows this keyword, which is offline first. And that might just help them find something relevant to them. I wanted to file storage, realm, creating, and not one persisted to disk. Not entirely sure how to do this with MongoDB, but the keywords that you are looking for is offline first, and looking around for MongoDB offline first, I came across this white paper, which which might help you, and I will share the link to that white paper that I found. I doubt it has anything useful, but you never know. The links, how do I add a link? This is a link. Insert, which might help you. Personally, I have used Couch. I have used CouchDB plus PouchDB to build offline first web apps. They have the learning curve for this is a bit steep. Steep, that's not how you spell steep. Is a bit steep, but I think it works really well once put together. Really, but you don't. But once you get it, it becomes really easy to build offline first apps. I've also mentioned that MongoDB has Realm. What the hell is even MongoDB Realm? It's an embedded object-oriented database, real-time. Yeah. What is it? What would you call it? It's not. It's a database, so it's a different type of database. No, it's not even like MongoDB. So I wouldn't. Yeah, I would not add that here. Might just be irrelevant. Yep. And with that, I think I'm gonna call it a day. Yeah, I hope if you're still here, Salan, I hope I was able to help at least a little bit. And yeah, I would like to make this a weekly thing. So every Thursday, 4 o'clock, do this, answer whatever questions I get. If not, answer whatever questions I can find online. Either way, just try to help some people out. That's the plan. I don't know. I need to definitely improve my setup because now I'm sitting in the dark. And yeah, the camera died in the middle, which is also not fun. So maybe things I will try to mend, but might not be able to mend in a week's time. We'll see. But yeah, thanks again for joining and catch you next time, hopefully. Take care.